Hey there, it's Karenology. If you think you've heard it all, wait until you hear this wild story. She pulled up in that candy red golf cart like she owned the whole damn street, engine whining like a mosquito in my ear. Sunday morning, barely past 7, and there she was, Karen, president of our oh-so-dignified homeowner association, megaphone in hand like she was commanding a parade. Only this parade was marching straight into my backyard. Attention residents, she bellowed before I even set down my coffee. Today marks the kickoff of our community's summer splash bash. Hosted at Jack Coulter's pool, I nearly choked on my brew. My name, my pool, my damn yard. I stepped outside barefoot, mug in hand, sun stabbing through the rising steam of August. "What the hell are you talking about, Karen?" She blinked at me like I was the one in the wrong. "You didn't attend the monthly meeting, Jack. The board decided, unanimously, I might add, that your pool is the ideal location for our charity event. It's for the local animal shelter." I didn't agree to this. You didn't object either. Silence is consent. Section 4.7. If you want to check the bylaws. She motioned behind her. A parade of HOA lackeys in matching shirts were already unloading coolers, decorations, extension cords. Someone wheeled in a fog machine. A teenager rolled a portable speaker, the size of a coffin, onto my lawn. "Get off my property," I said, the words low and hard. Karen gave a tight, condescending smile. "Jack, don't be difficult. It reflects poorly on you. The community has expectations." She meant control, power. I felt it all gathering like a storm cloud over my porch. Entitlement, thinly veiled threats, and the creeping realization that maybe this wasn't just a party. Maybe this was a message. I went back inside, locked the door, but the noise didn't stop. Music started blasting. Kids I'd never seen before cannonballed into the pool. Someone dragged a power cord through my living room window without asking. I pulled the plug. They plugged it in elsewhere. They acted like the place was theirs. By noon, I'd called the cops. They showed up, talked to Karen for 5 minutes, then came to me with shrugs. "Civil matter," they said. "HOA has rights, sir. You'll need to settle this through the board." The board? Karen's little court of cronies. I felt the ground shift under me, like a fault line cracking wide. I wasn't just dealing with a woman drunk on HOA power. I was up against a whole damn system built to grind people like me into polite compliance. I sat there at the window, watching as my yard turned into some plastic suburban. Mardi Gras, and I knew something had snapped. This wasn't just about a pool anymore. It was about the last place in my life that was mine, and how easily they thought they could take it. And they were right. They had taken it. Without breaking a sweat, without lifting a finger in consent. And I'd let it happen by doing what I always did. Keeping quiet, hoping it'd blow over. But this wasn't blowing over. That night, around 3 a.m., I crept out back. The moon glinted off the water like glass. Empty solo cups floated in the deep end. Someone had vomited in the corner of the patio. I stood there for a while, barefoot on the concrete, the desert air pressing down on me like a weight. Then I went to the breaker box, flipped the master switch, and started draining the pool. It took hours. I stood there the whole time, arms crossed, watching the water spiral into the sewer like the last of my patience. By dawn, it was bone dry. I wasn't making a point. I wasn't fighting back. I was declaring war. By noon, they were back. I heard the screech of tires and the tinny voice of Karen echoing through the cul-de-sac. I didn't bother looking. I already knew the sound of fake authority when I heard it. And sure enough, by the time I opened my front door, there she was, standing at the edge of the drained pool, in her sun visor and floral blouse, hands on her hips, like she was surveying a crime scene. What in God's name did you do, Jack?" she barked. Her lackeys flanked her, two holding phones like they were live streaming some HOA emergency. I stood on the steps, arms crossed. "Looks like someone forgot to ask permission. You sabotaged a charitable event. You're going to be reported to the board. Do what you gotta do. But you're not using my pool. Not now. Not ever." She sneered, lips thin with fury. "You think you can just ignore the community's decisions? You live here, Jack. You're not above the rules." "No," I said, stepping down toward her. "But I sure as hell ain't beneath you." That got to her. I could see it in her eyes, the twitch of her jaw. She was used to compliance. Passive men, distracted families, people too wrapped up in soccer games and office work to push back. I wasn't any of those things, not anymore. By sundown, the paperwork arrived, folded into my mailbox like a passive-aggressive love letter. Notice of a fine. $2,000 for destruction of community property and willful obstruction of an HOA-approved function. I laughed. Out loud. Then stopped when I saw the water bill under it. Triple my usual usage. They'd reported a leak, and the city believed them. The shutoff notice was stapled to the back. That night, I sat in my kitchen with the lights off. No music, no TV, just the hum of the fridge and the soft tick of the wall clock. I held the papers in one hand and an old photo in the other, me and my wife on this very patio, 20 years back, grinning in the sunlight before time and illness and the grind of days wore us down. I whispered to her, half a prayer, half a promise. They want war. They've got it. The next morning, I drove to City Hall, parked where the shade barely touched the dashboard, and walked straight into the records office. I asked for zoning maps, parcel histories, water use permits. The clerk, young and pale, asked why. I told him I was researching. He didn't need more than that. 3 hours later, I had what I needed. Karen's property, her lush lawn, her ridiculous two-tiered fountain with cherubs pissing into ceramic bowls, was on a parcel classified under water conservation zoning, meaning her decorative plumbing had limits, real limits, but it was more than that. I found the record from 4 years ago, when the HOA applied for a landscape variance. Her signature was on it, and a clause. Mandatory weekly reporting of water output for all non-functional water features. I drove home smiling. Not wide. Just a tight, focused line. That smile you make when you're already 3 steps into something and can see the next move before it's made. That evening, I watched her fountain burble and spit, right on schedule. Then I got in my truck, drove to the hardware store, and bought 40 feet of reinforced tubing, a sump pump, and a few connectors. I had a plan, one that didn't involve lawyers or cops or HOA hearings, one that tasted like justice. That night, under the moonlight, I got to work. The next morning, the fountain was dry, her lawn soaked, my pool refilling. I waited on the porch, arms folded, sipping hot black coffee. The sun came up slow and brutal. And when Karen came storming across the street, trailing droplets in fury, I didn't move. What the hell did you do? I didn't answer right away. Let the silence stretch. Then I gestured lazily toward her yard. Looks like you've got a leak. Maybe you should file a report. She sputtered, shaking. You can't. This is theft of water from a feature you're not even supposed to have running past 6 p.m. I'm just doing my part to conserve, Karen. Doing what the board always says, being a responsible neighbor. She stared at me like I'd grown horns. I knew then she had no play for this. No committee, no form, no fine, just the gnawing realization that I'd stepped out of the script she wrote for people like me, and I was just getting started. The next 2 days passed in uneasy silence. Not from my side. Oh no, I mowed my lawn, oiled the hinges on my gate, even waved at passing cars like I didn't have a Cold War, boiling just beneath the concrete. Karen, on the other hand, didn't show her face. Not once. Her prized fountain stayed bone dry, a sad, empty relic of petty power. But silence, I knew, was never her endgame. It was the inhale before the scream. It came in the form of a bright orange notice, duct-taped to my front door on Wednesday morning. Emergency water audit. It read in all caps. Property under review for unauthorized consumption. Compliance required within 24 hours. No name, no department. Just a stamp from the local utility board. And, in smaller print, a phone number that went straight to a voicemail claiming, "You've reached the Water Efficiency Oversight Liaison of the HOA." She'd made it up. Whole cloth. A fake number. A fake position. But a very real threat. Because that notice? It looked official. Official enough that when my neighbor Greg passed by walking his golden retriever, he raised an eyebrow and said, "Everything all right, Jack?" I smiled. Never better. I didn't call the number. I didn't rip the notice down either. I left it there, like bait. By nightfall, 2 people had taken pictures of it. I counted. My front porch was the new village bulletin board, and Karen had written the headline. Let her think it was working. That night, I went through the bin in my garage where I kept old irrigation supplies. Hoses, clamps, even a busted pressure regulator. I needed them for what came next, because I'd noticed something on Karen's property last time I was over there. Something subtle. Her side yard backed into a utility easement, and she'd rerouted her hose system to hide one of the drainage lines under decorative gravel. She'd buried evidence of her illegal water use under a layer of landscaping. Sarts. Thursday, I got to digging, not on her property. I wasn't stupid. But behind mine, just along the edge of the greenbelt. I followed the pressure gradient on the regulator I'd borrowed and used a cheap soil sensor to track where the water was flowing. And wouldn't you know it, there was backflow. Not a lot, but enough. Someone had tapped into the city's irrigation bypass. I photographed everything, documented timestamps, recorded water pressure variances. Then I went fishing, not literally, figuratively. I emailed the utility company under my own name, not to report a violation, but to ask for clarification on backflow safety. A neighbor suggested I install a pressure lock. I wrote, "Is that something required by code?" The reply came swift and alarmed. "Please provide your address. That's not compliant with residential guidelines." Bingo. By Friday, 2 utility inspectors were walking Karen's lawn with clipboards and heat sensors. I stood on my porch drinking lemonade, as one of them pointed toward the gravel beds and shook his head. She came out screaming, not at them, at me. "You called them, you petty old snake." I asked a question. They answered, "Maybe if you'd read the bylaws you quote so much, you'd know stealing municipal water's a real violation." She looked like she might lunge at me, fists clenched, face red. But she didn't. She retreated. That night, my water was shut off. No warning, no notice, just silence from the pipes, like the house had exhaled and decided to stay empty. I tried the outdoor spigot. Dead. Called the city. Closed for the weekend. I sat in the dark again. No lights, just candles and my own rising fury. Not fear, fury. She'd pulled strings. Or someone had. It didn't matter. The message was clear. Back off, or we'll squeeze until you break. But they'd underestimated me. Again, because while Karen played her game in sunlight, all pageants and petty tyrannies, I knew how to move in the dark. I didn't need an audience. I needed leverage. And now I had a reason to take it further, because no one cuts off a man's water in the desert and walks away smiling. And no one drains his pool and gets to fill it with lies. They wanted escalation. I'd give it to them, but not the kind they were ready for. Saturday morning came dry as a bone. Literally. No water for coffee, no flush in the toilet, just the desert sun peeling through my windows like a heat lamp over meat. I stood in my kitchen staring at the faucet, as if glaring hard enough might summon a drop. Then came the knock. 3 short raps. Sharp, purposeful. I opened the door and found Greg, my neighbor, standing there with a jug of water and a sheepish grin. "Heard what happened," he said. "Figured you could use this. Brenda says it's barbaric, cutting off a man's water like that." I took the jug, nodding. "Thanks." He hesitated, then added, "I'm not taking sides, Jack. But this thing with Karen, it's getting weird." It was always weird. Just took folks a while to smell it. He gave a dry chuckle and walked off, leash dangling in his hand. I poured the water into a kettle, placed it on the stove, and stared at the blue flame. In the silence, I could hear the faint hiss of a sprinkler from a few houses down. One of those automatic systems no one thinks twice about until it becomes weaponized. I remembered my Navy days, stationed on a ship with water rations so strict we had to shave with a damp cloth. Compared to that, this was luxury. But still, it was the principle. That afternoon, I drove to an old contact. Lenny ran a plumbing supply store out by the freeway. Half legit, half gray market salvage. We used to fish together back in '03. He owed me a favor. You want a what?" he asked, leaning on the counter. Flow diverter, low profile. Something that blends. And a lock-off valve. Custom key. He raised an eyebrow. "Planning a heist?" "Something like that." By nightfall, I had what I needed. I spent the evening under my deck, snaking piping through the crawl space, connecting the diverter to the old rainwater capture barrel I hadn't used in 5 years. Illegal for drinking, but legal for plants. And conveniently, I had a lot of thirsty plants. At dawn, I turned the valve and heard the gurgle of water rushing through the lines like a heartbeat. My front flower beds sprang back to life. The faucet in the garage coughed, then dripped. Not much, but enough. It wasn't a fix, it was a flag. A signal to Karen. You can shut off the tap, but I'll dig my own well if I have to. Sunday brought round 2. Another notice on my door, this one hand-delivered by some clipboard toad. From the Homeowner Association, eyes glazed with the kind of obedient detachment only petty bureaucrats possess. You're in violation of residential water conservation measures, he droned. You've been observed irrigating unlawfully. I'm using rainwater, I said. He blinked. Still requires approval. No, it doesn't. Page 14, paragraph 3. I helped write that clause back in 2010. Maybe read the damn manual. He looked stunned, unsure if I was bluffing. I wasn't. He left without another word. But that afternoon, someone slashed the hose connecting the rain barrel. Not a clean cut. A jagged, angry one. I found the remains dripping into the dirt. And in the distance, I swear I saw Karen's silhouette behind her curtains. This wasn't about water anymore. This was about territory, like wolves pissing on tree trunks. That night, I stood in my empty pool, staring up at the stars. The shell of it echoed every movement. A hollow basin of what once was. My wife used to love night swims. Said the water under moonlight looked like velvet. Now it looked like a grave. I ran my hand along the bottom. Dust. Pebbles. Then something caught my nail. A crack. I crouched. Ran a flashlight along it. A hairline fracture, maybe 6 inches long, veining outward like a spider web. She'd overfilled it during the party. Or someone had. Pressure stress. Damage. That alone could cost thousands. My pool wasn't just empty, it was broken. I stood up slowly. And, for the first time since this started, I felt it. Not just anger, not just irritation. Grief. They had taken something from me, from us. A piece of her, of the life we built here. And that's when I made the decision. Not to fight back, not to retaliate. To end this completely. But I wasn't going to end it with paperwork. Or fines. Or some speech at a board meeting. No, I was going to end it with something she'd never expect. I went back into the garage and pulled out the blueprint tube I hadn't touched in years. Time to rebuild. But first, time to ruin her game for good. I spent the next week off the radar. No morning walks, no garage door left open, no porch sitting with a glass of iced tea. Just me, the blueprints, and a list of materials long enough to choke a mule. I mapped every inch of the pool, every fracture, every outdated pipe, and weak seal. And then, I designed something new. Not just a repair, a transformation. Karen, meanwhile, was quiet. Too quiet. Her yard remained perfectly manicured, her fountain still dry, though the piping had mysteriously disappeared overnight. I didn't ask questions, didn't need to. Silence in her world meant planning, an ambush simmering under a friendly wave. I called in a favor from a man named Buck, a concrete specialist with a foul mouth and the forearms of a heavyweight boxer. We'd worked together on a civic monument back in '07, before he went rogue and started building illegal skate parks for rich kids. I told him I needed a special job. Under the radar, no permits, no HOA sniffing around. What kind of special? Kind that turns a swimming pool into a fortress. He didn't blink, just said, "I'll bring the saws." While Buck sourced materials, I handled the legal side, quietly. I contacted the county clerk and refiled my property as undergoing structural renovation. Vague enough to stall the HOA from intervening, but legit enough to hold up if questioned. The permit department didn't ask for details. Small-town bureaucracy works in your favor if you know when to smile and when to show teeth. By Friday, my backyard was a war zone. Trucks rolled in before dawn, and I made sure to hang tarps over the fence and run loud generators. Enough noise to deter curiosity. Karen showed up at 10 sharp, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her forehead like a tactical visor. What are you doing, Jack?" Her voice was cool, but the edge was there, thin as piano wire. I stepped out from behind the scaffolding. "Just a little landscaping." You need approval for that." "I've got county documentation." That doesn't mean it complies with HOA guidelines." Funny thing about guidelines," I said, wiping dust from my hands, "is that they aren't law." She tried to crane her neck past the fence, but Buck revved the saw behind me, sending a plume of fine concrete dust into the air like fog. She coughed and backed away, fuming. For the next 3 days, we worked non-stop. We stripped the plaster, reinforced the basin with steel mesh, laid new pipe routing, and restructured the slope of the pool floor. But that wasn't the real project. The real project was under the shed. The one no one ever noticed? The rusted thing in the back corner of my lot. While the team worked on the pool, I was beneath that shed, digging, expanding a crawl space into something more. Ventilation, power line extension, waterproof lining. It wasn't pretty, but it was enough, because I'd decided. If they were going to treat my home like community property, I'd build something they couldn't see, something they couldn't touch, a place that wasn't part of any neighborhood map. Karen came back Monday morning, this time with 2 board members. One of them, Richard, wore a Bluetooth headset, like it was surgically attached to his skull. "We need to inspect the modifications," he said, formal, officious. "You'll need a warrant," I replied. Karen scoffed. "We have the right to visual confirmation." I nodded. "And I have the right to close my damn gate. Goodbye." I shut the gate slowly, deliberately, watching her expression shift from righteous indignation to something closer to panic. She didn't know what I was doing, and worse, she didn't know how to stop it. That night, the chain on my front gate was cut. Sloppy job. I knew it wasn't a break-in. It was a message. I replaced the chain with a reinforced lock and installed a motion sensor light rigged to a siren loud enough to wake the devil himself. Then I sat in the underground room I'd carved beneath the shed. Dusty, unfinished, but mine. I stared at the blueprint by flashlight, traced the lines with my thumb. This wasn't just a project. It was a statement. I would not be moved. And if they wanted to see how far I'd go, they were about to find out. Tuesday morning came with a knock. Not on the door, but through the wall. A deep, echoing vibration that rattled the window panes. I stepped outside to find a backhoe parked just across the street. Karen stood beside it, clipboard in hand, flanked by a man in a neon vest with a county seal sewn onto his pocket. She smiled like a wolf in a floral scarf. Good morning, Jack, she called. We're doing some emergency easement access work today. City ordered. We may need to inspect your property lines. I narrowed my eyes. Emergency? Didn't hear about any broken mains? Prevention is key, she replied, smug as a banker at a foreclosure auction. The man beside her said nothing, just adjusted his hard hat and nodded like he didn't care either way. I held up my phone. You don't mind if I get this on video, do you? Karen's smile didn't waver, but she stiffened just a hair. The worker shifted his stance. Of course not, she said. Transparency is important. I filmed the whole thing. They never stepped past the curb, but they lingered, measured, took photos. Karen pointed toward my property and whispered into her phone more than once. After they left, I walked the perimeter. Nothing was disturbed, but I found a small flag marker driven into the grass near the edge of the old side gate. Red plastic, no label. Not there the day before, they were probing, looking for weakness. I went back to the shed. Spent the day fortifying the hatch. Steel crossbar, new cam locks, a sliding gravel plate that hid the entrance under a false floor. From the outside, it was just dirt and old tools. Inside, it was becoming something else. That evening, Buck returned to finish the last pour. We worked until midnight, filling the new pool with a hardened epoxy resin that sealed the base like a bunker. Not for swimming, not anymore. It wasn't a pool now. It was a roof. A roof for what lay underneath. Wednesday brought a letter. Certified mail. Homeowner Association letterhead. 3 pages of dense, overcomplicated language accusing me of structural deviation, permit fraud, and hostile use of communal aesthetics. The phrase made me laugh out loud, but it was the final paragraph that mattered. Should you fail to comply with an immediate inspection within 72 hours, legal action may be pursued to determine your eligibility for continued residence. Not a fine, not a warning. An attempt to evict me from my own home? They had overplayed their hand. I folded the letter, tucked it into a folder with the rest of their threats, and added a post-it note. Final round. That night, I installed the final component, a power bank tied to solar panels I'd been testing on the roof. It was small, silent, and completely off-grid, enough to run ventilation, lights, and my laptop underground, because I wasn't just building a hideout. I was building an archive. Every HOA action, every false report, every incident of harassment, every doctored photo or citation. I had it all. And now I had a place to keep it where they couldn't reach. Thursday morning, I delivered a letter to Karen's mailbox. No return address. No threats. Just 3 words typed in bold across the page. I am prepared. That afternoon, she showed up on my property again, alone this time. No clipboard. No smile. You think this is a game, Jack? She said. No, I replied. I think it's over. You just don't know it yet. She glared. Her eyes darted around, like she expected backup to appear from the hedges. Then she leaned in, close enough for me to smell the mint on her breath. "You don't know who you're dealing with." I met her gaze, calm. "Neither do you." She left without another word. That night I sat in the underground room, the new ventilation humming soft and steady. I opened my laptop, typed in the password, and brought up the file marked Final Operation. I wasn't waiting anymore. No more countering, no more reacting. It was time to act. Time to make her afraid to knock again. Friday morning, I sent out 5 envelopes. Not emails, not texts. Actual envelopes. Stamped, sealed, anonymous. They went to 5 different addresses around the neighborhood. Each one contained a printed packet. Photos of redacted utility logs, screenshots of Karen's water abuse filings, and aerial shots showing her yard. Long after allowed irrigation hours. I didn't include my name. Didn't need to. The facts spoke louder than any signature. By noon, the phone tree had ignited. I heard it in the street. Whispers, half-choked laughs, the rustle of blinds lifting just an inch. Karen's car left her driveway and didn't return for hours. And when it did, she was alone. No clipboard, no sidekick. Her gate stayed closed. Good. I wasn't done. That night, I launched the second part of my plan. From the underground room, I tapped into the private Wi-Fi line. I'd been leeching off one of the HOA's own repeaters. Karen's, specifically. Months ago, I'd overheard her bragging about the special router for security cameras. All that bandwidth and no password change since install day. Amateurs. I sent a final email, this time to the regional code compliance officer, complete with a packet of time-stamped photos and a polite request to investigate a potential misuse of public water subsidies. Then, I shut the lid of the laptop, flipped the switch, and sat back in the dim amber light of the bunker. Let the wheels turn. Saturday morning came with silence. The kind of silence that tells you you've been noticed. Karen's fountain was gone. I mean gone. The cherubs, the basin, the marble base, ripped out like it had never been there. In its place, bare dirt and a hastily laid tarp, corners staked down like a shallow grave. The woman herself didn't show face all day, but around mid-afternoon, a black SUV rolled down the street and stopped at her curb. 2 men stepped out. Suits. One with a clipboard, the other with mirrored shades and a county seal on his chest. They knocked. She didn't answer. They waited. Left a folder in the mailbox. It was happening, but victory wasn't the point. The point was what came after. Because you can scare a woman like Karen into silence, but you can't break her addiction to power. Not unless you make her choke on it. So I prepped the final move. Sunday morning, I printed invitations. Yes, real ones again. Folded cream cardstock with black script. Private event, neighborhood rededication. Hosted by Jack Coulter. I dropped them into every mailbox on the block. No mention of a homeowner association. No request for RSVP. The message was clear. This was my party now. I cleaned the yard, trimmed the hedges, polished the stone lining around the sealed pool, hung string lights over the patio. Subtle, warm, no blaring music, no fog machines, no forced charity auctions. Just one man taking back space. By 6 p.m., neighbors started arriving. Some cautious, some curious. A few brought chairs. Greg brought beer. I didn't make speeches. Just opened my gate, smiled, and said, "Glad you're here." The pool, now converted into a raised stone courtyard with benches and planters, drew attention. Kids climbed on it. Old Mrs. Delaney asked if I'd installed solar lighting. I told her yes. Didn't mention the bunker. Karen watched from across the street. Curtains half parted. Her porch light flicked on, then off. She never came out. I didn't need her to. The event wasn't about her. It was about the neighborhood realizing they didn't need her. By 9, the lights dimmed and folks started home. Some shook my hand. Others gave that subtle nod. The kind that says, "We get it now." No need for committees. No HOA approval. Just respect. Just people. I sat alone at the end, on the edge of the dry pool courtyard, sipping coffee. A breeze blew through the yard. For the first time in months, it didn't carry tension. Just dust, and the soft hum of a town remembering how to breathe. And then my motion sensor chimed. From underground. Someone was near the shed. I didn't panic, didn't grab a weapon. I just stood, walked calmly across the yard, and flipped the switch by the back porch. Every hidden light burst on, flooding the shed, the side yard, the fence line, with harsh white beams. There she was, Karen, crouched, bolt cutters in hand, like a burglar in her own kingdom. She froze. I didn't say a word, just stared at her, bathed in the light she never saw coming. And that's when she broke. She didn't run, didn't speak, just stood there in the whiteout glare of the motion lights, bolt cutters dangling from her hand like dead weight. Her mouth opened once, then shut. A caught fish. I stepped down off the patio, slowly, deliberately. Gravel crunched under my boots with each step. Karen didn't move. Her knuckles were white around the handle of those cutters, like she didn't know whether to drop them or swing. "Not tonight," I said. Calm, firm. "You've crossed your last line." Her lips moved. This isn't how this ends, Jack." You already ended it. I'm just here to watch it settle." I reached out, gently took the cutters from her hand. She didn't resist. Just looked down at her shoes, then back toward her house, like a child who knew she was already grounded. I'm going to ask you something," I said. "And I want the truth." "Why?" She blinked, swallowed. "Because you weren't supposed to win." Not rage, not venom. Just those 6 words, whispered like a secret prayer. I stepped back. "Then you never understood the game." I pointed toward the street. She turned, walked away in silence, shoulders heavy. No screaming, no threats, just the slow, defeated trudge of a woman who built her empire out of paper, and finally felt the rain. I didn't sleep that night. Sat in the bunker instead, watching camera feeds. Half of me expected retaliation, some final lunge, but nothing came. Just the slow fade of a battle ending without fanfare. Sunday morning arrived like a sigh. Blue sky, clean air. I stepped outside and found a folded piece of paper tucked into my mailbox. No envelope, just a note, scrawled in nervous, uneven handwriting. I'm resigning. The homeowner association is yours now, if you want it. Kay, I stared at it for a long time. The irony sat on my tongue like old whiskey. Bitter, then warm. I took the note inside, laid it on the kitchen table, and sat down across from it like it was a guest. The silence was thick. Not with tension, with possibility. And then I laughed. Loud and long. Because she still didn't get it. I didn't want the association. I wanted freedom from it. By noon, the same 5 neighbors who got my packets earlier that week showed up on my porch. Greg spoke first. We took a vote. Informal. Nothing on paper, but we want you to run the board. Clean house. Start over. I looked at them. Every one of them decent people. Flawed, tired, like me, just trying to live without stepping on landmines. No, I said, but I'll help you dissolve it. They blinked. Greg said, You serious? As a stroke, I spent the rest of the day showing them how. Which bylaws allowed for dissolution. What votes were needed. What loopholes Karen had left wide open in her hunger for power. By nightfall, the petition was halfway done. I didn't lead, just advised, guided, let them carry the weight. And they did. The next 2 weeks passed like something out of a fever dream. People who hadn't spoken in years now sat on porches, shared lemonade, laughed over shared miseries. Mailboxes sprouted signs. No to HOA. We decide together. Let us live. Karen was still there in her house. Lights on at odd hours. Curtains drawn tight. But she never came out. Not once. She didn't have to. The story was no longer hers. It belonged to all of us. When the final vote was tallied, informal but overwhelming, the association was declared defunct. No more fines. No more petty rules. Just neighbors. I marked the moment by planting a tree, right in the center of what used to be my pool. A sapling oak. Young. Resilient. The kind of thing that grows slow but strong. Some of the kids painted rocks to place around it. Others left flowers. One old man left his HOA citation envelope. Burned at the edges. As mulch. It felt earned, not victory. Something deeper, like memory, rooted and growing. And beneath it all, under the stone and the soil, the bunker remained, not as a fortress, but as a reminder of what we built when everything above tried to tear itself apart. Some months later, autumn rolled. In soft and slow, like a dog testing the porch before lying down. The mornings came crisp. The air had that quiet bite of change in it, like something big had passed through and left behind a gentler kind of silence. I sat on my back porch, thermos of coffee in hand, and watched the oak tree sway in the breeze. It had grown faster than I expected. Kids still played around its base most afternoons, chasing each other in circles or stacking little painted stones along the edge. Every now and then I'd hear them ask, "Why is there a tree in the middle of your yard?" I'd just smile. Because it needed to be there. The bunker was still below, sealed tight. I hadn't stepped inside in weeks. Didn't need to. Its purpose had been served. The memory of it kept me grounded. The knowledge that when pushed, I didn't fold. I adapted. Fought smart. Quiet. Long. Greg came by sometimes. We'd talk on the porch, not about the past, never about Karen, but about fishing, truck repairs, weather, small town things, the kind of talk men our age slip into like old boots. Once, during one of those quiet moments, he looked over and said, "You think she's ever coming out again?" I didn't have to ask who. No, I said. But I think she's still watching. Karen never officially moved. Her car stayed in the driveway. Mail piled up, then stopped altogether. One neighbor said she saw the lights flicker on at 3 a.m. once. Another claimed to hear the TV late at night, but no one saw her. The house became a landmark. Turn left after the haunted one, folks would joke. No one said her name. Eventually, a for sale sign appeared in the yard. No agent. No listing. Just a number. No one called. We let it sit. A year passed. The oak thrived. The shed collapsed during a windstorm, but I never rebuilt it. Just cleared the rubble and let the wildflowers take over. There was peace. Real peace. Not the kind you fake at HOA meetings, nodding along to bylaws while swallowing resentment, but peace built on something solid. Respect, shared sweat. The unspoken promise. Never again. And then one morning, I opened my mailbox and found a single envelope. No return address, no markings, just my name, handwritten. Inside, a photo. Karen, standing outside a different house. Florida, maybe? Or Arizona. Somewhere with sun and stucco and no fences. She looked older, smaller, no clipboard, no crown. Just a woman holding a grocery bag, looking at the sky. On the back, in shaky cursive, you were right about all of it. No name. But I didn't need one. I put the photo on my fridge. Not out of pride. Out of proof. That even the hardest concrete can crack. That even the deepest trench can be filled. That people, if they fall hard enough, sometimes stand up better. I poured myself another cup of coffee and stepped back out into the sun. The tree rustled above me, and I let it.